Good morning. Hi, I'm Phil Siefert. I'm the Director of Alliances and Strategic Partnerships at CyberCX, and want to thank you for joining us in our 8th edition of the CyberCX Cyber Dialogue. A quick shout out to to those of us joining from Victoria. Our support goes out to you. I know it's a difficult time. Since the last Cyber Dialogue, just back on the 10th of June, there's been a lot of significant amount of news activity in cybersecurity. Just on June 19, Scott Morrison made his call to arms that a nation-state actor is actually attacking our government organizations and institutions. And rapidly on the back end of that, which was impressive, on June 29, the government announced its $1.3 billion investment in cybersecurity that, amongst other things, is going to bring 500 new cyber roles to ASD alone. So while we're all aware that there is a significant forecast and growth in the Australian cybersecurity spend, going forwards, and that is forecast to be $6 billion in Australia in 2026, just 6 short years from now. That's according to Cyber. Everybody is well aware of the challenge that a severe shortage of cybersecurity ready workers are available, to Australia or globally. That prediction is globally is about 3.5 million short today of cybersecurity ready skilled individuals, and here in Australia about 16,000. Again, according to Cyber. So today we wanted to use today's presentation, this Cyber Dialogue, to bring you some thought-provoking insights from an Australian with a track record in being very successful globally, in achieving some career success. And so then maybe you could apply this to your own experience. So the agenda for today, over the next hour, we'll discuss with someone that we have a lot of respect for, Michael Sentonas from CrowdStrike, and discuss his career trajectory and share with us his experience, some of the industry changes and influences on himself and lessons learned. We'll also spend some time discussing what a nation-state actor is versus ecrime, trends in the Asia Pacific and Australia that he has observations on here, and from the front line. And we'll take the last 10 minutes. If you have any questions, if you have any comments that we can perhaps pick up from the group in the last 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please put them in the question section of the GoToWebinar control panel. So next slide. Joining us today is Michael Sentonas, and Michael joins us, as clearly someone who's done extremely well and recognized industry specialist. That history goes back a good 25 years here. Michael, as recently as February, he was promoted to the worldwide CTO of CrowdStrike. And CrowdStrike is the market leader in endpoint protection, incident response, and threat intelligence. And I'd like to introduce Michael to, actually, if you would, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you if we could. Could you sort of discuss a little bit how your humble beginnings as a programmer analyst, I see in your LinkedIn profile, back in 1995 with the Ministry of Justice and an Edith Cowan graduate. Share a little bit more about yourself. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Hey, Phil, how are you? And hey, everyone that's connecting in. You're making me feel old, going back to 95. Yeah, I university in Perth. As I normally am, I get itchy feet pretty quick, and decided to jump into my career whilst doing my last year at university. Did a lot of ADA programming back then, and jumped into a coding job pretty much straight up, and realized that I wanted to do anything but sit behind a machine and code, but that obviously is my background. So did that for a little bit, tried to get over and look at an infrastructure role, jumped over to Woodside, did some work there for them, and that was a huge opportunity, just looking to see the way things are done in oil and gas, and moved into security, and a little over 20 years later, pretty much I've focused entirely on security ever since, and loved it. It's been a great opportunity for me.
Terrific. And you're now a global executive, no longer just responsible for anything just here in Australia, of a Nasdaq listed company that's generating like $600 million in recurring revenue, 3,000 employees. I know that you happen to reside here in Sydney right now, and you work for a headquartered company in Sunnyvale, California. What's your typical day look like right now?
That's a great question. So this morning I was up at 3. Most days I am starting at about 1 or 2 a.m. It's not unusual to be sitting at my desk still at sort of 8, 9 p.m., which obviously is pretty challenging right now. But it's there's just so many calls, there's so many things to do. That balance is probably not a great thing, but covering US, Europe, and Asia Pac, it's pretty brutal, to be honest.
Okay, so career tip number 1 is live in the territory or live closer to the headquarters. I believe you have plans to do that, don't you?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I always said. You can do a job anywhere, and you can, especially now, everyone's on video conference, and the time zone is a killer. That balance will come. It's been 120, 130 days in the role, and I'm sure that'll settle down. But yeah, right now there's a lot of sleepless nights. As I say to my wife, I'm doing baker's hours, so I kind of feel for people that work those hours. That's for sure.
Very good. Okay, you're putting your time in. We appreciate that. Let's jump into the first question. Actually, these questions come to us from the attendees and ourselves. And the very first question was, from one of the attendees on the call today. I'm curious as to why Australians are so sought after. Is it related to our education levels? And so please, expound upon that. What is it about, Australians like yourself who've done well, both, domestically and now globally?
Sure. Look, I think it's more to do with the experience that we have, not so much the education level. What I've seen over the years is that, as much as I hate to say the cliche statement, but we typically do more with less. We have smaller businesses, we have smaller budgets. We have to have experience across more disciplines. So, in the US and parts of Europe where people are fortunate to work in these massive organizations, they start off very specialized. Someone who starts off in support may be focused on Windows, and the person next to them does Mac, the person down the hallway does Linux, whereas here we tend to have to do so many different things. As I said, have experience across more disciplines. We get opportunity to look at how businesses run, and that, as you become more senior, those skills are just so valuable. And you see typically a lot of people have made the move from Australia over to the US, and we've had some people that have gone and taken on really big CISO roles, CIO roles, and have done really well. And I think it's just that varied experience. We're pretty resilient as well. We don't mind rolling up our sleeves and working hard and a great work ethic. And I think all of those things together is what makes a huge difference. And I do think it makes us desirable. We got a lot of Australians working in CrowdStrike doing global roles. A big part of our threat hunting team that are going head to head against nation states every single day is a group of Aussies, and they're doing awesome work. We're well respected around the world.
Fantastic, great answer. Actually, it's a good perspective. The multi-hatted, requirement to live down here and operate down here, and then taking that globally. Let's go on to the next question. Through your career, and I guess this is, one of those questions around, what are the 7 habits of Michael Sentonas that help you get here? What do you think some of the personal attributes of, that you've applied that have been successful for you in cyber in particular?
Pretty straightforward. I mean, the technical skills are mandatory. IT fundamentals, operating system fundamentals, network fundamentals, understanding architecture. I think all of these things are absolutely mandatory. So I remember for myself, it was do all the Windows certifications, get Linux certifications, get across Mac, get the network certifications, Cisco certs as an example. I think a lot of people say coding is not mandatory, but I certainly think it is. That having that background has been super important for me, and through university, I did do a lot of math, and now working for a vendor where we use math for so much of what we do with machine learning, that's been hugely valuable. But I think, one of the things that I would also kind of call out is the soft skills side of things. You need to be passionate about learning. One of the things that I don't buy into is this whole conversation that everybody has around skill shortages. If we're all trying to hire people out of the same pool, then there's going to be a skill shortage. But I know here at CrowdStrike, we've got so many people from diverse backgrounds that naturally come. They didn't have my sort of route of university through to specific roles in this field. They've come from so many different areas. So we look for people that are passionate about learning. We look for people that are analytical. So I've got a couple of lawyers in my team that technically are phenomenal, and some of the people in Australia who are the big name personalities in cyber didn't come from, as an example, the same background that I have. Communication is critically important. Unless you're going to be working in a team of one, being able to work with people, so interpersonal skills are critical. So they're the ones that I would kind of touch on.
Excellent, thank you. And I think this probably goes to the next question as well. I'm sorry, it's gonna come up in just a few, but let's go back to you for a little bit, and let's open this up a little wider. What was in uni and in high school? What was your favorite? What was your favorite class? What did you really excel in? And did you have any particular background from maybe parental background or something that led you or put you on this path to cyber?
It's an interesting question. My favorite class, if there was somebody on the line that I went to high school with, they'd probably remember me as walking around with the basketball. So I was obsessed. So, if I was maybe 5 inches, 6 inches taller and more athletic, maybe that would have been a different career path, but I wasn't blessed with those genes. Look, I think my work ethic comes from my upbringing, without a doubt. That's just something that was drilled into me from day one. So I'm thankful for that. High school, I was very fortunate in terms of the school I went to. A couple of the teachers were really, really big on IT, and that was a passion of theirs, and it ended up being something that I latched onto and just loved. It's, I will always pull things apart. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's something technology related, mechanical. I've been known to buy a car, one of my first cars, and literally I remember my dad getting home and I pulled it all apart and inside and out, and that's just kind of the way I am. I like to break things, understand the way that they work. So the uni degree, as I said before, a lot of coding, a lot of math subjects that have obviously come in handy. And since then, a lot of courses, external courses, internal courses, and just a heap of self-learning. I'm always online reading stuff, try to find time, probably too much, to be honest.
Okay, and what was your first car that you pulled apart?
I got a Toyota Camry. It was not glamorous, but it was a decent first car, and it was super reliable. And pulling it apart included taking doors off the car to, I don't know why, just to clean it. I don't know what I was doing. I stripped the whole thing down bare, pretty much.
There you go. Okay, first car was a Toyota Camry. Nice, very practical. Let's go to our next question there, and this dovetails back to that original question, and I think you spoke to this a bit, but it has a specific connotation. The question has come from somebody that's in a more technical role, perhaps an analyst, a consultant, a tester who is looking to advance, and somewhat like you've done, from that technical role into a more, a more perhaps a global role, or scale into the business development side? And how do they best do that, in balancing, the emotional quotient with their intelligence, obviously, which is what's made them successful?
Um, that's an interesting question. I think, the thing that I would say is you need both, right? The EQ and the IQ question is a really good one, because I do tend to hear a lot of conversation where people suggest, technical people are high on IQ, and managers or business are high on EQ. And I just think that's so wrong. I think you definitely need a balance of both. Of course, intellect is going to help solve problems, work on calculations, whatever it is that you're doing, to process information. Emotional intelligence, kind of allows us to be creative. It allows us to use emotions to resolve problems. You need both. So, like I said earlier, unless you're working in a business of one, you can be the smartest person on the planet, but if you can't work with other people, it's just not going to work. You're not going to be successful. So I think it's definitely a case where you need both. And also, more recently, a lot of people are talking about MQ, which is moral intelligence. So having empathy and conscious, respect for others, tolerance and fairness. And I think, like I said, people are going to need to be across all of those. And I think, on the slide here, it says, how do you advance and get noticed? The thing that I'd say to everybody is the industry is incredibly small. Even from a global perspective, the industry is just so small. It's really easy to build your profile, and it's probably easier to damage it. So definitely, don't forget both. Be proactive, learn. Don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do for your career. You've got the bigger role to play. And I get a lot of people that say to me they want career progression, and they'll sit down and they're looking for the next step. And when I ask them what they're looking for and what they're looking to do, they'll basically say, I haven't thought about it. I thought you may have some suggestions. And I think you've got, people have got it mixed up. You need to be thinking about what it is that you want to do, and be looking at all of the resources around you to help facilitate, bounce ideas around, but you definitely need to have a clear plan, and that's certainly helped me.
That's terrific advice, actually, because we're now, at CyberCX, we're now a team of 500 cybersecurity practitioners, craftsmen, and there, I would expect that in the next 3 years there are roles that we haven't even considered that that people can create in this organization, like yourselves as well. So I think that's great, as well as the moral quotient. I think that's a great point, where ethics come into play, and how you go forward. It's becoming much more part of the way we need to think to be a successful and a healthy organization. So thanks for that. Here we go. Here are the important tips, and I think you've given us some here. But building a profile, in Australia to back up exactly what you've just put forward there. And then what certifications do you think or most important? And let's take this in two sides. One would be a technical track versus more the business development leadership track, if you would.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. So, when we talk about some certifications, there's obviously some baseline certifications. If you want to be in security, if you don't, like, for example, as I said with myself, it's basically what I've done for 20 years. But if you're starting off and you want to get an edge, there's things like CISSP. To me, that would be a bare minimum. But depending on which way you want to go, there's certified ethical hacker courses, the GISC, security expert, things like that, where you got a 2-day lab. If you want to really go down the hacking path and incident response, and you're brave enough, go and do something like the offensive security certified professional exam. It's a 24-hour straight exam, so there's not a lot of people on the planet that have done that. But there's things like CISA certifications to be a security auditor. certified information security manager courses, of course, and there's a whole range of business ones where, you know, you can go to universities or you can go and do a postgrad course. SANS has a whole range of great courses as well. It just depends on what it is that you're trying to do. But there's certainly a lot of resource that can allow people to get a lot of skills very, very quickly. And the important thing is they don't also have to be incredibly expensive, especially now. There's so much that you can do online and a lot of self-paced learning as well. So there's something that's accessible to everyone.
Great, thank you. And I did, you know, just a little bit of background and research. I counted up no less than 15 universities across Australia with undergraduate and graduate degrees in cybersecurity. So they've, you know, I think the education industry in Australia in particular has responded to this demand, and then it comes down to the TAFE courses as well as like you said, SANS and AusCyber and ACSC, who have, you know, some pretty good programs along the way as well. Our next step is to stop and pause for a moment and take a quick poll, if we could. So those of you, you know, here, you should have a poll that has come up, and we'd like to, you know, get you to respond online. And at the end of this, at the end here, when we do the wrap up, we'll give you the results. But how likely are you to pursue an international cybersecurity, you know, career? You know, you're probably perhaps participating one here domestically, but if you could do it internationally on the other side of, you know, our current challenge, why don't you answer one of those? We'll take 20 seconds to do that, please. Michael, we already know your answer.
We need a countdown sound.
Yeah, we do actually, and I'm not going to do that. Okay, thanks very much. So we've reached the end. Let's get back to the questions, if we could. So you know what, you know, globally, and you have a lot of experience now. And I think you've spoken to this a bit in terms of some of the capabilities. Are there anything, you know, that the rest of the world can learn from Australia's approach to cybersecurity that you think is of benefit, that you've seen used in perhaps a European market or the US?
Ooh, potentially a dangerous question, dangerous area to get into. I guess I'd say that because the question, I guess, suggests that Australia's best in class, or maybe, you know, we stand out above. And not that I want to suggest that we don't, but I don't also want to think this way. I don't think we should be thinking this way. I think you can find best in class examples around the world. You can find best in class examples from every vertical, from every segment. And you can also find dumpster fires along the way as well, and you'll do that in Australia. You'll find areas where we are phenomenal, and you'll find areas where we just are not good enough. And I think the reality is, and I guess it gives you a little bit of an insight into the way I think. I think we can learn a lot from everywhere. From, you know, we in Australia, for example, our security, our spend on security is lower many times to other parts of the world. Our spend across government has been low. I think that's very public, and it's talked about constantly. I mean, you opened up talking about the PM's address, and that's one of the things that's been talking about, releasing funds and actually putting some money, additional money that's greatly required. And even some of the regulatory frameworks that we have, you could argue are behind other parts of the world. But I think, similar to what we've covered already, we've got some amazing skills. We've got some amazing talent. We've got some amazing security programs that would be best in class. So I think the opportunity for everyone is to learn from everywhere. You know, get along to security events, get along to the global ones, share, collaborate. There is no one company, person, vendor, whatever the case may be, that's going to solve this problem. So, you know, it's a collective effort that we need. And I think having that open mind is incredibly important in everything that we do in cyber.
To add a little more color to that, this is my observation, and so please agree, disagree. But, you know, the US seems to be a bit more homeland security, defense centric in its approach. That's my engagement with either your peers or businesses there. Europeans more privacy, focused. GDPR is quite strong. Is that? Do you think that's a fair observation?
I think it is, and I think in many ways, sometimes that's why you can get some phenomenal talent out of the US, because you'll get a lot of people that have spent, a career in defense, and those skills transfer amazingly well, especially obviously if they've been doing cyber. But that is something that I think is a huge factor to where they have got some amazing skills. As you said, in Europe, privacy, if you want a career in privacy, do something in Europe, because it certainly is big there. But like I said, I mean, it doesn't take away from anything that we do here, that's for sure. But there's certainly some areas where you look at, the spend, the focus. There's certainly a lot of things that we can learn from around the world.
Great, thank you. Next question. I think we're now shifting away from a little bit about a career and such, and moving into perhaps some of the observations you have on a global view and locally. Then, so what are the challenges that you're seeing organizations today are facing? And we're not going to use that word about that pandemic as a challenge I put to you yesterday, throughout the presentation. But if we could move past that, what do you see current organizations? And I'd ask you if you would apply it, because I think it's appropriate for CrowdStrike. We've been so successful in large enterprise and government. Apply it to what do you observe at the mid-market, which is a much larger market but underserved or at least underinvested, and then the enterprise.
Sure. So I definitely think you owe me lunch, because you didn't say the C word, but you did say pandemic. So and you got to slide 12 and you folded. So you got to hold your end of the bargain on that one.
That's more than fair. That's fair.
There you go. Look, I think that the threat landscape, of course, is pretty crazy right now. And you can say that every year, right? I think if you look at every threat report, they're always going to tell you next year is going to be bigger and it's grown exponentially. The percentage increases, we don't tend to use too much of that, because they lose a little bit of the meaning. But look at ransomware today. It's pretty complex. Gone are the days of spray and pray email campaigns where an adversary is trying to send out as many phishing emails as they can, and they're hoping, they're working on the laws of big numbers, right? So they're hoping that a certain percentage of people are going to click on a link and they're going to get a couple of $100 from every single person. Now we get adversaries that are preparing a target environment for maximum damage. And the whole idea behind that is that when they ask for the ransom, the dollar value is huge. So we've seen examples of companies that have been ransomed for 5 to sometimes upwards $10 million US. And what's interesting is that you look at these adversaries, they're like a business. They're always looking at ways to develop their tactics. How do they monetize the ransomware or the malware that they've created? How do they command the highest payment? How do they take every dollar off the table, like any sort of sales campaign? We see very commonly these days where the adversaries take a copy of the data and then they try to sell it, or they will say, if you don't pay X amount of ransom on the first 5 days, then we're going to release a certain amount of your data onto the internet. So, you think of ransomware a couple of years ago, everyone was talking about, well, you got to patch and you got to have backups, and that's all great, and it's absolutely correct. But now you're also worrying about having a huge public data leak, and it just gives you a feel for how these adversaries are they're also trying to evolve and use different business tactics. Think of what's going on with nation. Sorry, go on.
At that mid market, then, how do they respond? I mean, I think there might be a bit of concern. What can I do? Do I have anything of any real value? And because I'm a 500, 600 seat organization, and I think can you give us some context there?
Yeah, sure. If you've got nothing of value, then why are you in business? To me, it's as simple as that. Of course, every business has something of value. So that's something that needs to be addressed pretty much straight up. whether you're a small business of 10 or whether you're one of the largest banks in the world, right? You need to have the right level of security. Obviously, the spend is going to be different, but you still need to make sure that the systems are available. You continue to run your business. You protect your whether it's protecting, you're doing internet banking and paying your staff, or it's IP because you're a huge pharmaceutical. You need to have that level of security. And that's one of the things that we've heavily focused on to make sure that, whether you're a business of 5 or you're a business of 1 million, we've got customers that are up there in those sorts of numbers in terms of the workloads that they're trying to protect. It's the same technology. Because an adversary is going to, especially one that's financially motivated, is going to be trying to extract as much as they can from everyone that they target.
Right. Let's go on to the next question. That's sort of a follow-up. So if we bring that down to Asia Pac, and in particular those on the call be interested in Australia, New Zealand, for example, anything specific?
I guess we could summarize that and just say ransomware and move on.
Okay.
Joking, but I am joking. But that's been one of the huge themes in the last 12 months. I think the list of publicly named companies that have been hit with ransomware, it's significant, and it's across the entire region. But the thing that I would also point out is state-based activities is also very high. There's a lot of things going on right now across Asia Pacific that's fueling the growth here. And if we think about what's going on in the world, we're in the middle of arguably one of the most challenging, complex times with China, where we're in the middle of a trade and diplomatic war. So, we should expect to see the volume of cyber attacks, I should say, I'm sorry, increasing, and that's what we're seeing around the world. We're seeing example of state-affiliated adversaries very active across Asia Pacific, whether it's an issue that's going on in the South China Sea, whether it's what's happening on the border in India. There's just so much activity. And I'll give you an interesting stat. Tuesday in the US, the FBI warned Americans that Chinese government theft of American information is taking place on such a large scale that more than half of the Bureau's counterintelligence cases are made up of investigations into Chinese affiliated cyber attacks. And that's staggering when you hear it from that perspective.
That is actually, and of late here in Australia, I've heard the North Koreans now, because of the P word, the pandemic, they and some of the conditions placed on their international trade, that they're actually turning to cybercrime as a method, or they have, and they're actually increasing their expenditure on cybercrime to just to bring dollars in to feed the country. So it is a global issue. I guess that's 2 lunches, isn't it?
I was going to say that's officially 2 lunches.
Okay, very good. Next question. It's poll. Sorry. Let's stop for a second and let's ask everybody on the if they wouldn't mind taking 20 seconds here. From their view, what's increasing the most, what's impacting the most, and then we'll go into some definition of what we see between ecrime and nation state actors. We'll take a few seconds to do that. And as we come back again, we'll discuss the poll results at the end of the program. So going on to this next question, then, and this is an opportunity, if you wouldn't mind, take an opportunity to educate us a little bit, from your position and especially your organization's position on, nation state actor engagement, attacks versus ecrime. If you could just give us a bit of a education on how you might define that, and then are you seeing a shift from one to the other? Is there any particular shift that's causing that to happen?
Sure. Look, I think a simplistic explanation: nation state adversaries are groups that are affiliated with a country. that are carrying out campaigns on behalf of the country, typically focused on information access, defense secrets, etc., getting information for corporate espionage, whatever the case may be. Ecrime activities where the adversary is financially motivated, so their pure focus is to make money from the attack. And then we see a lot of hacktivism disruption. Obviously, there's a lot of categories that you can break into, but if I kind of narrowed it down, they're the three areas that most people need to be thinking about. And, without a doubt, the biggest challenge over the last, let's call it 15 months, has been the escalation in ecrime. If I give you a couple of numbers, the increase so far this year has just been astounding in terms of hands-on targeted ecrime intrusion attacks. So the first 3 or 4 months of this year, we saw about a 330% increase in ecrime related attacks over the same period from last year. And if we look at all of the attacks that we've analysed so far this year, about 83% of those relate to ecrime, financially motivated threat actors behind them, and about 17% are nation-state sponsored intrusion attacks. Doesn't suggest nation state has gone down. It certainly has not. It has increased year over year, but it's just the volume of ecrime attacks. I mean, there's just so much money that is being made. It's just driving so much activity there. And the final point that I would make, the first 3 months of this year, the volume of hands-on keyboard intrusions was over half of everything we analysed in 2019. So that number is actually staggering from that perspective. I mean, we stopped and attempted 35,000 breaches last year. And if you think we did over half of that in the first 3 months, we have a very exhausted team.
If you wouldn't mind, is expound a little bit. When you say ecrime, organized crime, I'm from the U.S. originally. I think of Cosa Nostra. I think of are there gangs? Is it organized teams? Are there actual formations of companies that are conducting this, or is it still very individual based ecrime activity?
All of the above, really. I mean, you will find individuals, but we're seeing examples of organized crime groups that will develop malware, they'll develop a platform, they'll sell it, they'll offer support programs. We jokingly say a couple of the examples that we research, you can get better support from those organizations than you can from some software startups. They're really organized groups. There's also examples where there are nation states that are using ecrime to fund the regime, to fund whether it's defense programs or whatever the case may be. So there's a blending there as well. But typically they are crime groups that are 100% focused on making money, and they're making an amazing amount, which is what's fueling that growth.
Right, and costing the industry. And any view on cyber insurance? Is that something that CrowdStrike recommends, endorses, or do you find it of any value to organizations?
Look, we don't offer it. We work with a number of insurance providers that bring us in when they're working on behalf of their clients who have been impacted and they want somebody to do the incident response. We will be brought in to do that work on behalf of the insurance agency. Look, my thing will always be to, if I think about what I do, my technical background, I'm always going to be recommending people to stop the problem in the first place versus trying to rely on insurance. Right. Obviously, it has a place and issues will happen, but I think there's things that we can do to minimize the attack in the first place, or to minimize the impact of an attack and lessen the requirement. I think that would be my focus.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you for that. It is coming up more and more in discussion with customers as well. Now, before we move on to a bit of the Q&A section, rapid Q&A, which is next, I thought it might be an opportunity. You do represent a significant player in the marketplace in cybersecurity at CrowdStrike. Your top right-hand quadrant in many of Gartner's results. And I thought, what are the plans? I think for CrowdStrike. What do you think the future will be? You are becoming more of a platform play rather than just an endpoint play. Can you just put a little more behind that? It's an opportunity, a bit of an advertisement for you.
Sure, would love to. So, obviously our historical background was in threat intel, endpoint detection and response, and incident response. In a very short period of time, we've built out the platform, as you mentioned, to include prevention, cybersecurity hygiene, vulnerability assessment, through to building out the endpoint platform. So building in device control, moving our technology into the cloud, so visibility into how an organization may have configured the cloud, leveraging the ability to use the same technology to help with container and serverless environments. And there's just so many other areas that we've been focusing on in terms of response and building out the EDR capability that we have and threat hunting. So, I kind of look at that as our natural core, and we're never going to move away from the natural core. I don't want us to kind of drift away and end up having 30, 40 acquisitions that are poorly integrated and a platform of 50 line items where we spend R&D a little bit on every product. I think I want to make sure that we continue to be the leader in the field that we call that core. But our customers are going to require other capabilities, so we're naturally going to move into other areas. I think if you think about all of the data that we collect, the machine-generated telemetry, we're processing around 530 billion events every 24 hours. That information can be used to solve a whole range of different problems in security. Whether it's developing more insider capabilities, there's a natural capability in the DLP space. There's so many areas that are opportunities that we can look at. We've heavily focused on looking at workloads rather than endpoints. So as I mentioned before, we can deal with physical machines, we can deal with cloud, whether it's public, private, hybrid, online, offline environments. And we will continue to do that and then build an ecosystem of best-in-class partners. So we announced work with Okta and Proofpoint and Zscaler and Netscope, amongst others, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Well, that's good to hear that the ecosystem is working for you as well. And I think our observation, what has accelerated in this time of challenge, has been the move to digitization, the move to cloud. Obviously, is that also driving your future as well? That that workload transformation into public and hybrid cloud.
Absolutely, it is. One of the things that we've also made sure is that we didn't force our customers to roll out additional capability to be able to move into getting protection and visibility into their cloud environments. That's the traditional way that people must tend to solve security problems. So our natural position is to give people visibility into these environments and then protect them, secure them, and add additional capabilities. And we've been able to do that with the same architecture. So we've focused heavily on giving people the ability to do in-app evaluations. So you can be on the platform, and if you've got a use case that you want to solve, and let's say it's specific to cloud, you can click on the trial and you can turn it on, you can start using it, and if you want to keep it. But that simplicity is a big focus that we want to keep driving into the platform. And that's one of the strengths, I think, that the agent that we have hasn't really fundamentally changed in 9 years.
All right, and anything that you see on the horizon, technology-wise, that you may, CrowdStrike may or may not be investing in. What's that? There is a lot of niche. When I look at the Momentum Partners, presentation of all the security controls and the vendors that sit under it, and I think it's now reaching like 2,000, for example. There are a lot of single solution providers out there. Is anything of real interest that's starting to pique your interest?
Oh, look, there's lots. You know, a big part of my role is to look at where we go moving forward. That includes M&A. So I'm always looking at build by partner opportunities. And that includes traveling. Well, in the past, that included traveling around the world to look at a lot of organizations. Now we do it over video conference, but to understand what they're doing and look at opportunities, as I said before, potentially to buy, to partner, to build into the store model. Also part of my role, I have a fund. So we have an early stage fund that we think we've got a lot of experience to share. There's not a lot of organizations that come up with a concept, that take the concept to market, that become a multi-billion-dollar organization, that go public. I think as of this morning, but we're valued, we have a market cap of around $24 billion. So, you know, we want to help fuel the industry. We want to help find the next CrowdStrike. So we've made a number of investments into early stage companies, and we will continue to do that. I think that's, I love that side of my role, and we'll continue to focus on finding other innovators in the field.
Great, and I think what we're observing, and there's actual some activity that's starting to increase, is the recognition that Australia has some specific examples of investment, and we need to improve, you know, our investment appetite to invest in Australian companies. We're seeing more of that. We're dedicated to it as well, and we want to improve that outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we could move to rapid fire Q&A. We do have a few questions that have come in from the field that I might just to sing out to you, and we can just do quick responses. We'll do the poll results and wrap up. The first question is, given the CISP, CISSP requires 5 years of experience in cybersecurity, are there any other certifications that can help develop the skills during those 5 years?
Do a CompTIA. I think that's a good starting point, especially if you're really early on.
And then obviously some practical work experience, you know, which doesn't require a CISP certification, obviously would be helpful. The next question is, and this piqued my interest as well, this 24-hour exam from offensive security. What was the, you know, can you give us any more context around that 24-hour exam for offensive security? I think people, that's I imagine there's a lot of teenagers that might be interested in doing that, in actually being a bedroom warrior of some sort.
Well, I don't think there's a lot of people that have done it. Certainly, the last time I looked, it was a very small number because it's brutal. I haven't done it, but you know, if I could find 24 hours, I would love to give it a go. There's a couple of exams. I mean, there's a GISC security expert that's got a 2-day hands-on lab, and then you've got the offensive security certified professional. There's a range of scenarios, and basically you need to try to see how much you can achieve over that 24-hour time frame, and then there's obviously a minimum require that you would get a pass mark. So you know, when recently we came across somebody that had passed that, and you know, we hired them straight away. Yeah, it just shows so much discipline and learning. Definitely give it a go if you're brave.
Right. And what, you know, if you had that under your belt, what type of opportunities are there in cybersecurity? I mean, I could easily see where you're perhaps into defense and, you know, some of your intelligence agencies, but in the commercial world, you said you hired them. What kind of roles do you take on in offensive, you know, that you're looking for offensive security skills?
Well, it's not to hire people to do offensive campaigns, obviously. But you know, we have people that are incident responders that are going against adversaries every day. We have a threat hunting team who have come. A lot of them have come from government because, you know, where they're working on a few incidents a week, they're dealing with several nation states every day. So having that experience to understand the mindset and the way, the tools, the process, the techniques that these adversaries use gives you a massive step up. So you know, those sorts of skills we look for all the time.
And thank you. The next question, two-parter. Where do you find international opportunities? And the second part of that is, apart from the U.S. and Canada, what other hotspots? Canada and the UK. I'm sorry. What other hotspots are having a large intake and requirement? Do you think across the globe?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at it. One, obviously, you can start off working locally. Whether it's working for an organization like CyberCX or working for a vendor like CrowdStrike, that'll afford you a lot of opportunities. If I look at some of the people in your team, Phil, and as you know, I know Al Mac for many years. I mean, there's so much experience across your org that and connections. As I said earlier, the industry's so small, so jump onto organizations like this that can help transfer you. That's one easy way. Places to work, obviously, as mentioned, the US, Canada, the UK, across all of Europe. We've opened a big center in Barcelona. I was hoping that I might be able to move to Barcelona instead of the US, but apparently that's not a go. But there's a lot of examples like that. The Middle East. So working in Dubai, as an example, there is a huge community there that pays very well. Singapore, if you like the heat and malls and a low tax rate, Singapore is also a pretty great place to be. I probably wouldn't recommend people to be thinking about Hong Kong at the moment.
Fair enough. I think that's good. Just a little bit of reading the news will tell you that. Then, and then we have one last question. It's very specific. How do you rate a Cert 4 in cyber as a starting point to launching a career in the industry?
I rate all certifications. Pick several of them. And try to do as many as you can is how I would rate it. And the reason why I say that is there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to try to do several certifications to try to stand out. So, a Cert 4, as an example, it's a great starting point. I think, Phil, you nailed it earlier. Go and get some hands-on experience.
Right.
Try to do Cert 4 and try to do, if it might be something a little bit less difficult than a CISSP, do the CompTIA, as I said earlier. Try to get as many different skills as you possibly can so you can stand out.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I think we'll move to a wrap up. A last question for yourself, Michael. So looking back over this time, what advice would you have given to yourself now that you know what you know now?
It's the hardest question out of all of them.
I know.
Sleep now, because you'll have none coming. That's probably the first thing I'd say. Look, I think probably I'd tell myself to be more patient. Patience is probably not something that I've been known for. I've always been very focused and also been very focused on ensuring things are perfect. So I think when you put the two together, I'd probably say I was pretty full on in days gone by. So I'd definitely tell myself to slow down a little bit and slow down to do things right and understand people work at a different pace. I would tell myself to get a mentor straight away. So I've been really, really fortunate to have amazing people in my career. So the mentors in my career, I believe, drastically changed my career and career trajectory. And I think, if I was looking back, and I'd say that to everybody, if you don't have one, get one. Just invest in this as quickly as you can. And for those of you that have been doing it for a while, that have been in the career for a while, be a mentor to somebody. I think hugely important. And then the last one would be celebrate success. I think, once I worked out what I wanted to achieve, that became my focus. So, I don't want to say relentless, but, once I got the goal, I worked on the next one. So I'm not really one that focuses on acknowledging, what it took to get there or slowing down to enjoy the moment, as some people say. But, I do think it's important. you know, even if I don't do it today, I still don't do it today. I do think it's important to, you know, have those goals, but also understand and acknowledge what you've achieved. I think it's good for the soul.
Thank you, Michael. Those are wise words. Thank you for all of your input today. We really appreciate it. I think all of us on the call, you know, have been really impressed. I mean, you really do illustrate what you know, that career progression from, you know, the humble beginnings of a programming and a coding analyst. You know, here in Australia, having lost a career in basketball, unfortunately, that technical skills are fundamental. You know, I think you've spoken to that, you know, very well in terms of those basic, you know, certifications, you know, building a framework, you know, and having that background support from, you know, teachers and such have really shown how your career has progressed. And, you know, I think we have to acknowledge that, you know, you stepped into some pretty big shoes at CrowdStrike, right? You were promoted into a role that the founder of the business, Dimitri, you know, moved on, and you've taken those reins. So I think that's a recognition, obviously, of what you've achieved over time. So your input was really valuable, your insights, and we really appreciate that. So thank you again, Michael. And then we will, before you leave, get you 2 lunches when they open back up again here in Sydney.
Thanks for having me anytime.
You're welcome. So thanks everybody who joined us. We'll talk about the quick poll results if we could. Number 1, the results of the poll. Well, it looks like we have a winner. How lucky to pursue an international cyber career at this point. You know, you've got, you know, it's possible. My focus is in solving problems wherever they occur. And as Michael has shown us, you know, having an international cyber career might reside here and just long hours around the world. The next poll question, and that result there was, well, there we go, ecrime. And I think this speaks again to Michael's position that is, you know, at like 330% increase in volume of ecrime traffic over nation state at this point. And then all of the above fit in that category. So, you know, I think we can all be, we all can be confident that this industry is growing rapidly, and we all have a real opportunity to help our customers, you know, in security and the safety of how they connect their world. So with that, again, thank you for your time. There's a quick survey at the end. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't mind, you know, completing that. This is recorded and will be made available to you, as well as a global threat report available from CrowdStrike that we'll put them on that link. And everybody will receive a copy of the recording via email. Thanks again. Look for us to our next Cyber Dialogue on the 23rd of July. We've got an exciting new topic and industry. Thank you for joining us, and we'll conclude the call.